Explain physical abuse squad and your role.
Well, what I alluded to
Mm-hmm.
just now was what we did in the physical abuse squad. We in child abuse altogether, there was about 28 detectives. There was 4 sergeants, 2 lieutenants. And
Mm-hmm.
we averaged around 12 cases a week per detective. So we were very busy. Uh, what was very rewarding about that job was putting away perpetrators that,
That should be put away. Yeah.
well, right, but any criminal should be put away. But
Right.
I think society looks at abuse against children or crimes against children as especially heinous.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to investigate those, and they're very sensitive, very delicate, intricate cases, because your victim, the vast majority of the time, is not verbal, or you don't want to, if they're of an age where they can, explain what happened to them. It's something that is it's so delicate that you want to keep them away from um, having to testify
Mm-hmm.
on a stand, which is very intimidating.
Yeah.
Um, there's a nexus to drugs a lot in these cases. They're very difficult to investigate and bring to successful prosecution. So the training was very intense. It was very rewarding, all consuming, because it is a traumatic thing when children are abused to the point where they die or almost die.
Right.
Yeah, the experience of that, I think, was very rewarding, and it was a great experience. The thing also about it's hard, I think, to investigate these types of crimes in the sense of being able to interview or interrogate suspects or even witnesses to this because of the social aspect of society looking at it is such a heinous crime.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's ever really going to admit to them having done something so bad,
Right.
right?
I would imagine not directly.
Right.
Right.
So the art of being able to interview somebody to get them to admit to doing it,
Mm-hmm.
to give a confession, is probably the most difficult type of interview or interrogation that you would have to do. I think doing a homicide interview or an assault or robbery interview has a whole different angle to it, and so that was very, very complex and challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with a great bunch of detectives and learned a lot from them. And when I left that unit, it was very hard to do because it was a great job.
Well, you mentioned the developing questions and the interview and interrogation process being a bit of an art. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there because, like you said, it's a sensitive issue, and no one wants to admit to something so heinous directly. It's usually using an art to get to that.
That's
What
exactly right.
happened?
There's way to go. There's ways to go about doing that.
Yeah.
You're trained in that. And I think coming from Columbus with the resources they have, and um, to be able to train their people.
Mm-hmm.
We go to the detective bureau. You go into investigations is broken down into several different bureaus, and then
Right.
and then those bureaus are broken down into different squads, which you have a discipline where you investigate. Like I said, my discipline was physical and emotional child abuse. Now the overlapping aspect of that is we worked a lot with sexual child abuse, but that squad was down at Children's Hospital at the CAC, right? So that's how in depth they worked, and we worked hand in hand with Franklin County Children's Services,
Mm-hmm.
and with the doctors, especially at Children's Hospital, because Children's Hospital being such a world known hospital as far as how they treat children.
Right.
They're one of the best in the world, in my opinion. We worked a lot with those, but we would go to other hospitals as well. But generally, if an abuse case would go to, say, Riverside or Ohio State or Mount Carmel, they would end up at Children's Hospital, and they have a whole team of social workers and doctors that are trained as well in the red flags of child abuse, and then
Right.
you would work hand in hand with them. So you would learn, what would cause an injury on a
Mm-hmm.
child. What caused a spiral fracture or a corner fracture, or what to look for. It was for shaken baby syndrome, or skull fractures, or subdural hematomas and things of that. So you'd work hand in hand with doctors and nurses, and just learn so much, because you would take a vested interest. You become intimately involved because of the victim. I mean,
Right.
the victim's a child, and a
Yeah.
lot of the time, in a lot of our cases, very young children, like I talked about before, were not verbal,
Mm-hmm.
so had no one to advocate for them. So you were their advocate.
Well, part of the reason why I bring this subject up is you mentioned on your website your experience, and there's a growing issue throughout this country with online predators and children being involved. And you being from Dayton, and Dayton's a high crime zone for specific children abuse, because of interstate traffic has a lot to do with that, I understand. And then you go from the Springfield area to Columbus, and you bring all that experience and background to Perry County. Hence the reason why I'm questioning these things here, because this is a growing issue, and I know people directly that has been affected by this, whether it be online or whether it be physical, or both. And that's the reason for these questions here.
Well, they're great
Yeah,
questions, and I love to talk about it.
yeah.